The Princess Bride, specifically the book, William Goldman will tell you in no uncertain terms while he's narrating the book that this is not actually his book. It's not actually his story to tell. It's actually a story that was written by S. Morgenstern, a very famous Florinese author, way back in like the 1800s, and it's a true story, and everything that he's telling you is like just what S. Morgenstern wrote 100 years ago, once upon a time, and the book was like this thick, and it was huge, and it was bigger than Les Miserables, and everyone hated it unless you were in Florin because it was really long and boring and it was like a super political book. And really, S. Morgenstern went way too hard into Buttercup's entire hat era. No, the other woman, the Countess's friend's hat era, and what hats this woman packed to go marry the prince. And William Goldman will tell you every single boring part that had originally been in the original book while he's narrating this book and telling you the good parts, and it's a good parts version. And you can see right here, it literally says S. Morgenstern's classic tale of true love and high adventure, and that William Goldman is not really the teller of this story. William Goldman is a liar. He's a liar. He's a freaking liar. The man is lying to you through his teeth, okay? He's lying to you with every page that he writes of this book where he's saying S. Morgenstern originally wanted it to be told like this. But actually, it shouldn't be told like this. It should be told like this, because this is much more interesting. That S. Morgenstern was a very political man, and he just wanted Florin to be respected and for people to really understand the differences between Florin and Guilder. So he was trying really hard to tell you, like, the story of how it should be from the tale of S. Morgenstern. William Goldman is a liar. He wrote the book. He wrote the book, guys. It wasn't S. Morgenstern. There is no S. Morgenstern. Florin isn't real. There's no book that's longer than this. This is the longest copy. I also have a shorter copy. One moment. Let's go look together. Let's go look together at the shelf of Princess Brides. 1 a Princess Bride, 2 a Princess Bride, 3 a Princess Bride, 4 a Princess Bride, 5 a Princess Bride, 6 a Princess Bride, 7 a Princess Bride, 8 a Princess Bride, and then I have another copy of the Princess Bride somewhere around here. That's a hardcover. I don't know what shelf it's on. There are a lot of shelves of books in here. Say hi to my dogs. Anyways, here's my original copy that I originally read when I was 12, and I believed William Goldman more then than I even do now, because it literally says, wait, does this one not say S. Morgenstern somewhere? I don't fucking know. It is a lie. He is a liar. There is no longer copy. William Goldman did what many a fantasy author have said before him, which is, he said, well, the best way to tell this story would be to do it the way to tell it in the original tale, like J.R.R. Tolkien with The Hobbit. Because J.R.R. Tolkien tells you in no uncertain terms that everything in The Hobbit happened, and that this is just a history of what happened in The Hobbit, and that he's just translating everything from Elvish into American or English or whatever so that like the rest of the world can enjoy this story properly. That's what William Goldman is doing, but because there are no fantasy creatures in this besides R.E.U.S's rodents of unusual size, everyone believes him and goes searching for the longer book. And if you try and tell people, hey, I tried reading The Princess Bride and it was very boring for me, someone will look you dead in the eyes and say, you probably read the long version. You probably read the long version. That's not for everyone. I'm surprised you found the long version. William Goldman couldn't find the long version. I've been trying to find the long version for years, but I'm willing to bet that if you didn't like The Princess Bride, you read the long version. You should go to Barnes & Noble. They sell the shorter version there, the abridged version written by William Goldman, and that one you will love. 'Cause William Goldman is a fucking con man! There is no longer version. It's just this. It's just this. It's just whatever these are. So I need people to bring back fucking hardcore hand-drawn artwork on books, because this is amazing. This is amazing. And then we just got models for the newer version, and like they're very pretty, but they're not even the actual actors. They're not. Look, they're not the actual actors. They're just two people who dressed in the costume for the cover of this book, and I hate it when we used to have this with this. Like, this is very cool. This is very cool. Instead, now we just have boringness. Unless it's a Neil Gaiman book. Anyways, that's all. Goodbye.
I'm here to talk about the Sunrise on the Reaping cover, and I can't show the picture of it because otherwise my video will get disqualified for originality violations, but I'm sure most of you have already seen it. Far from the first person to bring up the fact that the cover of the book looks like Apollo's instrument, the lyre. I'm just running with my assumption that that's what the cover is supposed to be, because then I started reading about the mythology of the lyre. First of all, the instrument's called a lyre. I'm not going to pretend that that's not a play on words, but also thinking about the considerations of how Apollo came to acquire the lyre. Cliff's Notes version of how Apollo came to acquire the lyre. Baby god, Hermes, is born in a cave. He sees a tortoise with a really cool shell and is like, I want that. So he's like, hi, beautiful tortoise. Has anybody ever told you that you are just like the bee's fucking knees? And the tortoise is like, wow, nobody's ever told me that before. And so he buttered this tortoise up and earned her trust. And then when she turned her head, he stole the shell off of her back and flew away with it. So once he got his cool shell, he was like, well, now what? Ooh, I'll steal a cattle of the sun. It's like, yeah, it's a cardinal sin that'll get you thrown down into Tartarus, but he's fine, he's a god. So Hermes tries to single out some of the cattle, and to make it look like he didn't lead them away, he makes them walk backwards so it looked like they were walking the other direction. And then he uses the horns from the bull, and the shell of the tortoise, and some olive wood and strings to build a lyre. And then he dedicated his first song on the lyre to his mother, the only person he had ever truly loved in the world. Who does that remind you of? Who does that remind you? We haven't even gotten to the juicy part. So Apollo looks out at his cattle, and he's like, where the fuck are my cattle of the sun that are missing? Bitch. This one guy's like, hey, I saw a baby god herding some cattle backwards the other day. So Apollo tracks Hermes down, and when he finds him in the cave, Hermes starts pretending to be a baby, like starts sucking his thumb and pretending like he wants to suck on a titty. And Apollo's like, I don't care if you look like a baby, get up and fight me, bitch. Deadass Hermes like, but I'm just a little baby. I'm literally just a little baby. I don't have any money. I can pay you in blocks. And that's exactly what he does. He holds out his lyre and is like, actually, this is a present for you, Apollo. Listen to this beautiful music that's previously only been made by songbirds. And Apollo was like, wow, this fucks. I want that. Allow me to make you an exchange. What does Apollo give Hermes in exchange for the lyre? A magic wand depicting two intertwined snakes. And what does Hermes do, you guys? Hermes delivers information to and fro between the few deities doing the governing and the many people being governed. There's a complicated relationship regarding boundaries with his half-brother, Apollo, who among many things is considered to be the god of music, poetry, dance, as well as things like prophecy and justice, and is often depicted with a bow and arrow. There are many things about this. And I don't know, I just have a feeling, I have a hunch that this book is going to have many parallels with the mythology of the lyre. Because I feel like it makes sense. Also, not to read too much into it, but I was thinking about it, and Apollo's lyre has 11 strings, and then it has 3 other elements, the tortoise shell, the bull horns, and the olive wood, which could be used to represent District 13, the capital, and District 12. I don't know. I've seen so many people on Twitter wondering why Hunger Games fans are grasping at straws for what this next book is going to be about. I think people are forgetting that we were not anticipating a Snow point of view with the Ballad of Songbirds and the Snakes. Like, we had no idea that was coming. So a lot of people were anticipating a possible Haymitch point of view, but a lot of people were thinking it was going to be a lot more likely that it would be somebody else. And now that it's been established that Haymitch will indeed be the protagonist of the story, we still know little enough to take what little information we have and just run with it. And a lot of people speculate about whether this book is going to have multiple points of view, and I really don't think that would be likely. I do think it would be cool, but I think that part of the beauty of this series is that we see whatever is happening through a biased lens. And so you, as the reader, have just as much information about everything as the character you're reading. So if there were multiple points of view in this book, we would be at an advantage over the narrator. And that whole debate over everything being real or not real becomes abundantly easier to discern. So unless they pull a wild card, this book will probably be 100% from Haymitch's perspective. I can't lie and say that I'm not disappointed. It's not that I'm not excited or intrigued by a story about Haymitch. It's just that I think we've seen a lot of District 12 already, so I was kind of hoping we'd see more outside of that. I also just tend to prefer female main characters and narrators. So I can't lie and say I wasn't disappointed. I don't think that means I'm not going to like it, because the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, I felt a similar air of disappointment around the announcement, and then I absolutely loved it. Like, I know I'm going to love it. But it wasn't what I had convinced myself in my brain was going to happen, which is disappointing. I am really hoping that since we see more of District 12, we will get to meet Mr. Everdeen. I really hope that he and Haymitch were pals. I think that would fuck. I'm so glad somebody said this, because I've been thinking the same thing. And before anybody says that my theories are getting too out of control or off the wall, I need you to know I hold many theories about this at the same time because we know so little about this book, and I'm just throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. So once the book is out, we're going to find out what all of our theories are actually true and which ones were just us fantasizing. But while I don't think a multi-POV book would be at all likely, I do think she could pull a wild card and do a bunch of time skips, which I do think could be likely. Especially because I don't know if I made this up in my head or if she said this in an interview, but I thought that she'd said that she didn't want to make a whole other book that was set in the arena again. I don't know if she said that or if that was fans putting words in her mouth, but I also just still don't feel like there's going to be a whole ton of arena time in the book. I don't necessarily know if they would do it every chapter and have Haymitch be waking up every morning on the Reaping, especially because I think that would be really hard to make a movie of. But I do think that since her books are divided into 3 parts, there will be a bit of a time jump between all 3 parts. How big that time jump is going to be, I don't know. And I've seen a lot of people joke about how funny it would be to bring Woody Harrelson back on the cast and age him down to play young Haymitch. I don't think they need to do all that, but I do think it would be cool if they choose to do time jumps, if they brought Woody Harrelson back to play himself in a more present day. I don't know. What is the likelihood of any of these things happening? Probably zero, but we have so little information. This is what we have to do to survive. If you hear me refer to Sunrise on the Reaping as the new Hunger Games book over and over and over again, please just know it's not because I don't know the name of the title. It's because every time I say the word reaping on TikTok, the auto captions think I'm talking about a crime. And I try to be diligent, and I go through my captions to fix all of the auto corrections that might have for some reason mistaken the word reaping for a different word, even though the vowel sound is completely different. And usually I'm very confused and kind of irritated by the avid and frequent use of book title abbreviations like ACOTAR. I didn't know what ACOTAR was for so long, and I owned the book. But I will be able to exhale fully for the first time on the day people finally start accepting the new Hunger Games book, Sunrise on the Reaping, as SOTR, to abbreviate it. Also, is it SOTR or SOTR? Or SOTR? Or SOTR? I don't know. Another thing, when we get the new Hunger Games book, and it's not from any of the perspectives that we were planning on hearing, and none of the things in the book happen that we were planning on happening, do not be thwarted. Hunger Games fanfiction authors, grab your pens and start fucking writing right now. Right now. If you get to work now, you could have all of your works of fiction about Sunrise on the Reaping be finished before the book comes out. And then when the book comes out, you can publish your own rendition of the book. And then we can all read what you were thinking was going to be happening the whole time. What I'm asking for, specifically, are 2 things. A Tigress perspective and an Effie perspective. Those are the 2 things I want more than anything in the world. And I was really hoping we would get that with this book, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I really am wondering if some of my Hunger Games fanfiction authors can maybe want that. Here is my cat for my collateral. He's sleeping on another cat. And there's another cat that's right there. There's 3 cats in frame. Another thing I have to say about the Sunrise on the Reaping cover. When the sun rises, the sun also sheds light on the world. There is light to be shed on the reapings themselves. And this might not just mean that the book is going to take place on the morning of the reaping. Propaganda, being a really important part of this narrative, makes me think that we are going to get irrefutable evidence that the reapings were irrefutably, undeniably, completely, totally rigged from the beginning. I think we're going to get confirmation about that. And I have defended my stance on this numerous times. I have a million theories about how I think they're rigged, why I think they're rigged. You can go back and watch my 1,000 million videos about how I think they rig the Hunger Games reapings. I'm going to tell you right now, my theories are probably all completely wrong. but I do think that they rig them. You could argue that the way they're set up is already rigged, but I think that we're going to get additional information about this that's really going to make us be like,
Yesterday, the leader of the Palestinian resistance, Yahya Sinwar, was murdered by the Israeli occupation forces in the south of Gaza. And he was not found hiding in tunnels or hiding among civilians or hiding with Israeli captives. He was found accidentally by Israeli trainees. So none of the Israeli technology that targets Palestinian civilians in hospitals, in schools, and refugee centers. He was accidentally found and he was murdered fighting back against the Israeli occupation forces with his comrades and his AK-47 next to him. And I just want to say that none of your favorite fucking politicians that you guys wear pins of and tote bags and shirts and love to have posters of would ever die for you like the way that Yahya Sinwar died for his people, for his land. None of your favorite fucking politicians would ever do that for you. Not Trump, not Obama, not Biden, not Kamala Harris, not Hillary Clinton, not AOC, none of them. And because Israel has the littlest dick energy on planet Earth, it was no time before Israel publicized photos and videos of Yahya Sinwar's martyred body all across the internet and media in an effort to show that, you know, they are champions and that they're winners, and to humiliate Palestinians, to humiliate the Palestinian resistance, and lastly, to kill the resilience that Palestinians have. But little do they know that people saw a man die for his cause, die for his people on his land. And that is the bravest thing that many of us have never seen. Many of us have never seen something like this. Yahya Sinwar is an icon. Israel and the American government and the Arab nations that abandon the Palestinian resistance, that abandon Palestinians, you have unknowingly and subconsciously birthed an icon. It is because of the impact of Yahya Sinwar. People are chanting Free Palestine from New York to Japan, to France, to India, to Nigeria, to Australia, to the Netherlands, to the UK, to Canada. I mean, people are chanting Free Palestine like they have never chanted Free Palestine. That has never happened in the history of this world. And that is the impact that Yahya Sinwar has left behind. You cannot kill the spirit of people who want to be free. The legacy of Yahya Sinwar will live on. And more than that, the Palestinian resistance, the legacy of the Palestinian resistance, that will age very well. And I cannot say the same for Israel and America. And I take great pleasure knowing that. I take great pleasure knowing that the legacy of Israel and America and their participation in the genocide of Palestinians, that will not age well, and history will remember. We will remember. And I cannot wait for the day that people learn about Israel and America's genocide on Palestinians like the way that we learned about the Holocaust. And I just want to say once again to Netanyahu directly, you have birthed an icon. Yahya Sinwar is a revolutionary. His words will be echoed all throughout the world. His photos will be echoed all throughout the world. He is a revolutionary, and it is because of you that he is an icon. You did not kill the Palestinian resistance. You multiplied it.
I know the Cat's Eye members are accepting everyone's requests on their accounts in this app right now. And I don't even know if they're running their own accounts, but tell me why when Sophia accepted my follow request, I was giggling and kicking my feet. Like, that's my best friend for real. Like, we're tight. You guys wouldn't get it.
What is productive about being so quote-unquote morally pure regarding this upcoming election that you disregard and judge marginalized people and their thoughts and experiences? And also, why do you think that the choices you're making are the only morally pure ones? I'm not asking to be divisive, and I'm not trying to tell you who to vote for, because you have the right to vote in a way that you can live with, and I will not judge you for that. I've been seeing a lot of content lately saying that you are demoralizing or debasing yourself if you vote for Kamala, or that you never cared about Palestine in the first place, or that they just don't care how oppressed you really are in this country. You have other things to worry about. And I'm just not sure not only what is productive about that rhetoric and that mentality, but what you want people to do about it. For many people, voting third party is just not a viable option. For starters, not all candidates are available on all ballots in all states, and even if they were, y'all can't agree on which candidate to rally behind. Y'all are splitting your own split vote. Which means that for most people, this is another bad election between a career politician and a convicted rapist, an insurrectionist, somebody who has spent millions of dollars on anti-LGBTQ advertising and will continue to push anti-LGBTQ legislation, who wants to defund education, who wants no contraceptives in any way, shape, and form, condemning the lives of birthing people across the nation, who is consistently scapegoating immigrants so bad that small communities are receiving bomb threats based on straight up lies, and whose foreign policy condemns the very people you are trying to save. I mean, it is easy to keep your hands clean if they were never dirtied in the first place, but if you are a marginalized person, especially somebody with intersecting identities, you've been in the mud for a long, long time. In the same way that I will not judge you for voting in a way where you feel like you can lay your head down at night, you have to stop judging marginalized people for trying to do the same. Because unless you can tell me how that is productive, it just looks like you are touching on the same vein of moral superiority that mimics white superiority. I know what's best for you. Your experiences mean nothing. And if you deviate from what I'm thinking and saying, then what you're doing is bad. Unless y'all have a good reason for the disregard and belittlement of the lived experiences of oppressed people everywhere, you need to stop. Because y'all cannot keep sitting so high on your moral purity horse that you're condemning some under the guise of saving others, especially when you're realistically not saving them either. Get wanting to lay your head down and rest easy on the pillow, but you have to care whose blood soaks the sheets, or at least not get mad at other people for not wanting that blood to be theirs.
You know who the biggest villain from Outer Banks season 4 was? It wasn't Topper, and it wasn't Rafe. It was that goddamn girl, Ruthie. Ruthie, when I catch you. Ruthie, when I catch you. That girl genuinely scared me more than I think Rafe or Topper or Kels ever has. Ever. More than Ward, more than anybody, Ruthie is the villain.
There's this really sinister form of ableism that I have observed my entire life in social circles, in classrooms, at work, that gets written off as just classic bullying and like poking fun and, you know, just being a little bit of an asshole. But I think it's more than that. And when I observe that in other people, I am automatically disgusted and disappointed. Now, I do want to give people a little bit of grace, a little bit of patience, because I have to understand that not everyone is raised to understand that neurodivergency is a complex thing. And in fact, I think most people see neurodivergency and difference as very black and white. I think that special ed programs are partially to blame, because I'm not saying that all of them are bad, but you know, growing up in Naperville, for example, the special ed programs catered to children with Down syndrome, children that were autistic with high needs, children that had visible disabilities. And so there are these markers physically and behavior-wise that set these children apart. And so most people understood, you know, these children have AIDS, they are in a different classroom because they function differently than us, and so they're going to learn in different ways. And so in my K through 12 education, I didn't witness a lot of blatant and overt ableism towards people that were in these special ed programs, because it was widely understood, especially in my social circles, that that is downright cruel, and it's not right, and there's nothing funny about it. But the children who were somewhere in between, the children that did not qualify to be in that special ed program, did not qualify to have an aid, but were not neurotypical, like popular girl A, B, and C, and football player D, E, and F, you know? Those in-between children were ostracized. I'm talking about the kids that didn't have enough eyes on them, or perhaps didn't have the resources to obtain an autism diagnosis. And there's a lot that goes into that. You know, black and brown boys, especially at young ages, if they're autistic, they're typically just labeled as troubled, and then they unfortunately oftentimes end up in the school to prison pipeline, for example. I'm also talking about the girls that learned to mask really well and excelled in the classroom, but when it came to recess, when it came to socializing with other people, they really, really struggled because of their neurodivergency. So these children were left very vulnerable to harassment and bullying, because what that harassment and bullying actually is just cloaked ableism, right? But the reason it can be cloaked, the reason it goes unnoticed, is because these children do not have the typical markers of difference. They might look like me, for example, completely able-bodied. They might walk like me, talk like me, but they don't function in the same way. They might be missing social cues. They might not understand boundaries. They might not understand why these girls are interested in that, but they're really interested in this. So they're left to be isolated and they're treated as weird and cringe and strange. And it's not just by their peers, it's also by their teachers. And not to sound like one of those people that's like, I have a black friend, but I have worked in special ed. I do have many friends that are neurodivergent. And so perhaps I'm better at picking up on these in-betweeners. But at the same time, I don't think that my peers didn't recognize what they were doing. I think a lot of them did know, and that's why they picked on these people so much more. I saw this a lot in high school where a friend group would have a designated court jester, you could say. And I think this court jester would think, okay, these people are laughing with me. But more often than not, those friends were laughing at them. And it's fascinating for me because I come across people on my FYP and in real life that I can tell are neurodivergent in some way, just by the way that they talk or the way that they express themselves to me. And other people pick up on that really fucking fast. And the way they treat those people that can hold a job, that can live on their own. You know, people that, for example, are autistic but don't have high needs. The way that you are treating those people says a lot about how you're going to treat everybody in your life, frankly. I guess I'm making this video to remind everyone that autism, for example, isn't going to look the same on everybody. There are people that are autistic with high needs that are nonverbal, and they will never be able to live alone, and they will need help going about this life their entire life. But there's also people that you work with, or you go to school with, or you ride the bus with, that might not operate in the same way that you do, and that doesn't give you a free pass to be a bleep. I hope I'm making sense. And if you relate to this at all, I am sorry that you were targeted by assholes, or if you continue to be, let me know. Let me know.
Okay, take this opinion with a grain of salt because obviously I'm not a professional ballroom dancer. I've just been watching the show for a long time. Back when they used to do what I was saying, where they would split the cast and half would do one dance style and half would do the other, they would often have quick step either week 1 and week 2. And even though it's counterintuitive, I actually think it makes a lot of sense. Because yes, quick step is fast. It's in the name, right? But it's not necessarily all that complex. It certainly can be. You can get really technical with it. You can add in all of these complicated elements of like your kicks and flicks between your partner's legs and like messing around with your direction and all that stuff. But at its core, quick step is staying and hold and trotting around the floor with your partner, which are two very foundational skills that will come in handy for literally every other dance. I feel like it's a dance that's very easy to adapt to somebody's skill level because if you're coming in with zero dance experience, rhythm is probably something you need to work on, and you can just work on that with your dance. You don't have to get super technical with it. If you already have a good sense of rhythm, then you can start adding in more elements. But if the dance is kept with simple choreography, it is just straight up fewer things that a dancer needs to think about in order to put out a good dance. You're not trying to get hip action. You're not trying to do beautiful, extended, long lines. Like, those are things that are absolutely necessary later as the season goes on. But if you don't already have the basics, how are you possibly going to be able to think about those things and do it all well? Like, don't get me wrong, I think Chandler did a beautiful rumba week 2. But giving her a rumba in week 2 is actually insane. She did a great job, but there's so much to think about. Rumba is like notoriously one of the hardest dances that they do on the show. And while yes, she did a great job in week 2, imagine how much better of a job she would have done in like week 6. I feel like Steven actually would have been the perfect candidate who would have really benefited from Quick Step week 1 because his drive was great. Like, he came out, he did a great job, but he has the tendency to get a little bit ahead of the rhythm because he's anticipating things. And the Quick Step is a little bit harder to do that in than the jive because at the very least, Riley can backlead. She can prevent him from getting too far ahead.
I will never forget when this guy in my philosophy class, freshman year of college, was prompted to provide the class with his own moral dilemma, his own original idea. And his moral dilemma was, say I date rape a girl. He roofies her. She wakes up the next day. She has no idea what happened. She goes about the rest of her life having no idea that she had been essayed. Would it be wrong That was his prompt. Would it be wrong? And he argued that it wouldn't be, because she would never know that that had happened to her. And if we're just ignoring, like, the science behind these things, like, say she legitimately does look past the physical trauma that that causes. Say she legitimately does forget. Are you kidding me? My moral dilemma was like, say mommy's on her deathbed, and turns out, whole time, daddy's been cheating on her. Do I tell mommy? Yes or no? Or like someone else's was like, say I want to adopt twins, and I have to separate the twins to adopt one of the twins because they won't let me adopt both of the twins. Do I separate the twins? You know, like normal shit. Obviously stuff that's kind of hard to talk about and grapple with. Normal shit. Normal. And it was beyond me. It was beyond the whole class. It doesn't matter what kind of background these people had. We had the conservative football players. We also had the hair-dyed, septum-piercing having liberals. And everybody was like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? The professor kept trying to mute him. He kept unmuting himself, being like, I have another point. I have another point. He got kicked off campus sophomore year. You could probably guess why.
Take a closer look at the cover for Sunrise on the Reaping, because I think it could give us a better insight into potentially the story.
And back on the PowerPoints for visual purposes. Basic takeaways: purple. Purple is a color of high class, royalty. It is the color of game makers' robes. Very interesting. As many people have pointed out, this looks like a crown. We're dealing with the crowned victor of the 50th games, a key player in Panem's history. It also kind of looks like a sunrise, and of course that's the title of the book. But these are a little bit basic, and I'm more interested in looking at this symbol because it is very, very interesting and very different. Many people in my comments have pointed out it looks like a lyre, which is a harp instrument, and it's attributed to the god Apollo, but its creation is Hermes. He uses it to deceive, trick, and steal from Apollo, who's later caught and then punished. Kind of plays on Haymitch, deceiving and tricking the capital, especially at the end of his games with the force field. And I'm curious to see if music plays a part in this story as well. Also interesting is that Apollo, Plutarch gets his name from this figure, Plutarch, who worships the god Apollo. And this symbol ends up symbolizing wisdom and moderation. It also makes me think of a different myth, Orpheus and Eurydice. I saw Hadestown a few years ago, by the way. Fantastic. Highly recommend. If you're not familiar with this story, these are lovers. She is bitten and killed by a snake, and she goes to the underworld. He is heartbroken. He is a musician, very, very talented, specifically with that instrument. He goes to the underworld, hoping to persuade Hades, and he does by charming him with music. He only agrees to let her go on one condition: you can't turn back. They make the long journey, and at the end of the tunnel, they can begin to see the sun. And he quickly turns around to tell his wife, his lover, and she disappears. And it is so tragic. And this could truly play on so many different relationships, right? Haymitch and his girlfriend, who is currently unnamed, Haymitch and Maisley within the arena. I would not be surprised if we don't see something similar like this play out within the arena. Then randomly, I'm always looking into these things because this always comes up, like almost in everything I look into with this series. There is also a bird and a snake named after this instrument. This literally happens so often. Guys, there is probably a bird out there that can be attributed to every single character in this series. So this is interesting. I don't really know what to say other than to offer you this information. My friend Quinn pointed out this cover for Julius Caesar. Suzanne Collins loves her, Greek tragedies, her ancient Greek and Roman history. So this is no surprise. This is a common symbol within that world. And the cover's kind of similar. So thank you, Quinn. And then, ironically enough, we got the cover for the German edition. The L is 450. It's the Roman numeral 450. But I'm more interested in this circular wheat grain. What does it mean? What does it symbolize? Abundance and sustenance. What also symbolizes that? You're kidding! Cornucopia. But not just that, it also symbolizes the cycle of life. And this is going to pop up because my friend Dove, please watch her video, it is fantastic, talked about the snake eating its tail, and how this kind of looks like that. This symbol represents the destruction and rebirth constantly happening. And I think this is really interesting because we have the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is really the birth of the games. I know it is the 10th games, but really it is the birth of the games. Then we have Katniss's story, the destruction. And so this game in particular, we know how it's going to end. It's going to end, sadly, unfortunately, like change does not happen. Haymitch's story does not get better for a long time. And so I could see it being a shift period, a destruction and rebirth. And it also makes me think of a huge theme throughout that entire series, which is the cycle of violence, like the ever-ending cycle of violence. This is something Katniss is constantly debating, like, when is this going to end? I do this, someone does this. It goes on and on and on. And she ends up debating it at that table in the end with all the other victors. Do we have another games? Do we continue the cycle of violence? And it's just this really heavy moment, never ending. Again, going back to, I'm not sure this story is going to end very happily. And then it made me think of this quote in Catching Fire, and it's, "The sun persists in rising, so I make myself stand." This quote is everything. Now, it's like technically kind of like a throwaway line, like not really, but like it's not like the beginning of anything. It's not like anything that stands out, but it stands out to fans, and I think for a reason, right? And I think this encapsulates another theme within this series, right? The sun persists in rising. The sun will rise. It'll happen. The day will continue. Life will continue on. And I make myself stand. Katniss is presented with this choice multiple times in this series. And in this moment, right, she's struggling with the trauma from the games. And, you know, she can stay in bed all day or she can stand. And at the end of the series, she's presented with this again, right? Prim is gone. What does she want to do? Does she want to continue on or does she want not? And she decides, I'm going to make myself stand. Makes me think, right? We have the title almost in here, right? Sunrise on the Reaping. The sun will rise. The games will happen. And it is your choice to decide what to do. The sun persists in rising, so I make myself stand. I don't know. This is just a very powerful line that maybe it'll come back. The other thing, I'm looking at the other covers, trying to draw what I can, right? We've looked at this important symbol. I don't know what these rings represent in the back. We've always featured these rings, right? In the original trilogy, we have like basically default. Then we have the arena, the target on the Mockingjay. It is flying a different way. And then the wings are fully spread open and those rings are cracked. They're changed because we have revolution. We've broken out of the arena. We've broken out of this cycle. And then we have Ballad. Weirdly enough, there was like a magenta/purple version. Was this a hint, Suzanne? I don't know. But this cover is very, very interesting to me, right? We have that ring again, but it is natural. It is not man-made. And this really relates to this book in particular because we're looking at human nature. And we're presented for the first time the songbird and the snake within the arena. They're confronted. And we have this debate, who is the songbird, who's the snake? And you could easily say Snow is the snake. Lucy Gray is the songbird. That makes sense. But then Lucy Gray has like an affinity for snakes, and Coriolanus has like this moment with songbirds and the Jabberjays, and these lines are blurred. And then we have this one, which is the songbird and the snake are directly confronted, but they are connected at this point. There is no tail. They're facing each other. Really interesting. This symbol will come to mean something that was said in the press release, and I'm really interested to see what it is. I'm also interested to see, I feel like there is a good chance that there's another book. Looking at this, right, we have 3 symbols, right, representing this overarching thing. Suzanne loves her 3-arc story structure, and I just feel like there's more to come, and I would not be surprised if we got one more book. So yeah, I was kind of grasping at straws, trying to pull from what I could, because this symbol is very, very interesting. It's very different. I have no clue what it could truly be, but it clearly means a lot. And it has drawn everyone's attention. So I would love to hear more theories. Do you think we're going to get another book? What do you think this tells us about the book? I want to hear. When it comes comes to Haymitch's games, there's always a question surrounding the mentor, right? There's kind of two schools of thought, two camps, right? He has one, it's supplied by the Capitol, and then he doesn't have one. The mentor's important, not just for coaching, right? We see that in Katniss and Peeta's time, they're also coached by Effie. You know, their performance is coached by Effie. She's not going to have as much knowledge about the games and how to survive in the arena as Haymitch is, but she still helps coach. The key aspect to the mentor bit is that is the only person who is able to secure sponsorship deals for you in the arena, which is key to survival. And I know what people are going to say, so let me do a disclaimer. In the first Hunger Games book, they're going through the motions of the reaping, right? The whole ceremony, they're talking about the games, why they have the games, and then they talk about previous victors from District 12. Katniss says there are two. One that's alive and one that is Haymitch. Okay, there's two. Who is the other? A lot of people suspect this is Haymitch's mentor. There is another victor from District 12. I don't think there's anything in the text to suggest that that is true. I think it's Lucy Gray. I think it's hints of Lucy Gray. And you're going to say, whoa, Lucy Gray, she was erased from history. Her tape was erased. She's erased from the Capitol. She's not celebrated in the Capitol or reminded. They're not going to talk about her. But her memory lives on word of mouth in District 12. And it's not like it's a strong memory because Katniss doesn't know anything. She just knows that there's someone else. Now, I used to kind of lean more towards someone's provided by the Capitol, but based on the description for the new book, the new Hunger Games book, Sunrise on the Reaping, I don't think he has one. And I think that's the cruelty of it. I think where Snow is so cruel in his treatment of District 12 is the way he ignores it, right? You don't have to put in a lot of effort to hurt them. He says at the beginning, as the games begin, Haymitch understands he's being set up to fail. If he doesn't have anyone who's securing his sponsorship deals, the odds are definitely not in his favor. Right, when we look at Katniss, the reason she survives for so long is due to sponsorship deals. When we look at Finnick's games, Finnick specifically, oh yes, he's so good at their performance, but what makes him win? Katniss notes the most expensive sponsor gift in history. I'm sure we'll see an escort try to coach him throughout, but I don't think there will be a mentor. And I think that's the cruelty of it. Okay, so in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, we are post-war, and they are recovering from the war, and the capital, like the city, is devastated, and they really need money. And I think we get this best from Coriolanus' mouth about Sejanus. So I'm just going to read that. We're introduced to Sejanus for the first time, and Coriolanus notices his outfit. The ensemble was stylish, brand new, and smelling of money. War profiteering, to be exact. Sejanus' father was a District 2 manufacturer who had sided with the president during the war, and he made his fortune off of this war. He was able to buy his family's life into the capital, and the Plinths now enjoyed the privileges of the oldest, most powerful families. For Coriolanus, the Plinths and their kind were a threat to all he held dear. They were new, rich social climbers, but not just that. They were particularly vexing because the bulk of the Snow family fortune had been invested in District 13. And we know what happened to District 13. And during the war, the center of the capital's military manufacturing had shifted from District 13 to District 2 and fallen right into the Plinths' lap. The way Snow talks about this, it does not seem like prior to this war, that people could move up to the capital. But this was an exception because the capital is devastated. And we know that at the beginning of this book, Snow and his family are threatened to be kicked out of their, penthouse, as many other capital families have been. They're struggling, and the new money is taking over. They need the new money to rebuild, and they're allowing for this time to allow those people in. But by the end of this book, the capital is kind of already on their path to rebuild to be what it once was, and so they're not going to necessarily need more people to move in to help support this rebuilding, reconstruction era. So no, I don't think anyone can buy their way up because there's no need to, and the capital is very, very exclusive. Look at how they don't even fully accept the Plinth family, Sejanus' family. They only allow him because of his money. In addition to this, in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, some of Coriolanus' classmates talk about how they have visited the districts. This is no longer allowed by the time you get to Katniss. People are not traveling. And that's a crucial bit of control, right? By keeping people in their area, they can't travel, they can't see other areas. It is maintaining their control
over the entire nation. As someone who's primarily known for talking about the Hunger Games series, let's talk about something that a lot of people get wrong. A lot of people think they're Katniss in the story, the hero, and Katniss is the hero. She's the person we see the entire story through, and she's a spark. She's a part of the puzzle. She is the symbol for the revolution, but she's not the sole reason that change comes about. And Suzanne Collins really stresses this in Catching Fire, and especially in Mockingjay, that it is through community action, through grassroots organizing, through community. Sometimes it can be really daunting seeing how can I actually make change? I don't have that much money, I don't have that much platform, but if we work together, each reaching out to people, each donating at least $1 to this campaign, we will bring about change. A lot of people will think I have no platform. If I post about this, if I repost this, it's only gonna reach 3 people. It's only gonna reach just a handful of people. That's 3 more people than would see it before. Okay, I can only donate $5. That's $5, that's important. And if we all donate $5, if we all donate $1, we are bringing about change. It's that community effort. We are strength in numbers. We cannot bring about change just by ourselves. We have to look to people in our community. We have to look to who we can reach to actually help. This is Mohammed and his family. They need help immediately reaching their goal to escape. Says that he will never forget the people who are standing by his side right now. If you want to donate, the link is in my bio, the very first link. If you want to spread this, do everything you can. That means liking, that means reposting, that means commenting. That means sending this to everyone you know. We have the power together as a community to bring about change, to help this family. Stop what you're doing right now and do not scroll if you want to help a family in need. I can't sit here and come up with a gimmick, try to trick you into watching this video. I just need you to watch and stay. I am connected with Dina, her extended family, and her 3 beautiful children. We talk almost every day and she is so kind, but this morning she sent me pictures of her middle daughter, Joan. She is just 4 years old. She has a rash and a fever, and there is no AC, and temperatures are rising. And this sickness, this rash, is likely brought on by unclean drinking water because there is no other source of water that they can find. So whatever you do, please share this. Please boost it. Comment anything. Comment what you're reading right now. Comment your favorite TV show. Comment something interesting you've learned recently. And if anything, donate, because they are so close to their goal to getting to safety.
When I die, please don't make up lies about me. Everyone does not want to be my friend. I do not light up a room. People don't notice me. I have a smart mouth, a dark outlook on life, and maybe 2 or 3 friends. So please don't make people wonder if they're at the wrong funeral.
I'm not gonna stitch the jackass screaming about when did national disasters become political, because I was born in Florida and I still have family there, so I will get nasty and I will get personal immediately. However, I am gonna say this. A personal philosophy of mine is that we all need to start focusing on our own communities instead of parts of this country we know nothing about. Because the fact of the matter is that America is too big, too climate, too geographically, too culturally diverse from state to state, area to area, for you to be yelling like that. Just because you are angry and saying the word Republican does not mean you are right. First of all, when did natural disasters become a political issue is the most privileged question I've ever heard somebody have the audacity to ask with that much rage. Sit the fuck down. Natural disasters have always been political for those of us who the government is not interested from protecting from anything. Not the wind, not the rain, not anything. Because you want to know when natural disasters became political for me? In 2005, when I was 7 years old, watching American citizens stand on the roofs of their houses begging for help. Even at that age, even at that time, I knew I had heard the rumblings in my Black American community near Washington, D.C., that the Black people who lived near the levees that broke had been saying that infrastructure was deteriorating for decades, perhaps even centuries. Same thing with the Baltimore Bridge. People in that area have been saying that infrastructure is neglected for years, and I know because I lived in Maryland for most of my life. These things don't just happen. They are neglected because the government doesn't care about a portion of its citizens, and you reinforce that when you get on here and you decide that these people didn't leave because they're just dense. Because that's easier to believe than acknowledging the reality of the situation, which is that you don't get to judge. You don't know these people's circumstances. You don't know enough to. And what infuriates me is that because so many of you are so incapable of keeping track of history that happened within your lifetime, you're not thinking about the fact that this ecological disaster is just stage one. Do you have any idea how many Black people died after Katrina because of police violence? There are a lot of reasons why people don't evacuate. Just because the government tells you to do something doesn't mean you're magically within your means to do it. If the government told you you owned a $30,000 fine today, could you just fork it over? Would the fact that the government is telling you to do so change your circumstances that prevent you from doing that? No. Then how about you shut up about people trying to leave their entire homes and livelihood behind? It's really easy to latch onto the illusion that the people blowing up on TikTok, the people who didn't leave their homes for some strange petty reason, despite clearly having the means to, it's really easy to believe that that's the majority of people. But the reality is that people who actually cannot leave aren't on TikTok right now, you absolute bonehead. And you know what? Fuck it. I'll say it. Even Republicans can be disabled. Right? It's very possible that there are a lot of Republicans out there right now who actually did believe the meteorologists, who did believe that they needed to evacuate and weren't able to, because evacuating is hard, expensive, takes a lot of resources to do, not easy to do easily, especially when you're talking about a hurricane, right? Winds, you can't just hop on a plane, right? Everybody trying to leave one place at once, hard to do, hard to organize, hard to be a part of. So one, how about you channel all that passion into a little bit of goddamn empathy? Because going, oh, that's so sad, people on top of their houses, is not empathy. That is pity. That is you looking at people in a situation that anyone would feel bad for and not extending them any more thought than you would a puppy on the road or in a shelter, right? That's a human being with a life as complicated as yours and as many different factors influencing it as yours. When you sit there and you think about that, that's empathy. When you sit there and you try to understand why someone would do something, even if they don't share your worldview or your understanding of something, and it's not coming from a place of malice or wanting to paint that person as being vitriolic, that's empathy. A lot of you have genuinely lost your ability to empathize with people in this country who are just as disadvantaged with you are, and you cloak it with the word Republican, and you don't even know that that's who you're talking to or about. It's hard enough to evacuate. It's harder to evacuate if you are disabled or you are poor, if you are marginalized on any axis that makes getting around in this country more difficult, and there are quite a few of them. So I'm going to issue the entire "why didn't they evacuate" crowd a little TikTok challenge, something fun. Hand the phone to someone who knows what the fuck they're talking about. Go watch a couple Katrina documentaries and then find a mutual aid group to meet up with. Go do something actually productive instead of screaming at an imaginary population you made up in your head. You don't know that Republicans who didn't leave because they didn't trust the science are as big a population of the people who are being harmed by this absolute tragedy right now. And can you at least wait until the bodies are cold before you make assumptions about people who you don't even know? Ooh, y'all make me mad.
I literally had to lay down on the floor. I'm so stressed and so angry. But that part, right? Like, do you not see the inherent dangers of spreading the rhetoric that there are certain people in this country who do and do not deserve to be extended basic support from the government? Do you not see how that could get a lot of people, particularly a lot of already very marginalized people, very unalive? Because it could. The fact of the matter is that as climate change continues, and it is continuing and will continue to happen until leaders start putting regulations on the massive corporations causing the majority of environmental damage, climate disasters like this are going to get more and more frequent. Someday, it will happen to you. It will hit where you live. Those of you saying, I can't even imagine living in a hurricane state, I'm not saying I wish this on you. I'm saying the way things are going, someday you will. And someday you will need help from the government, and you will not get it because you sat there and you participated in a culture where it's okay to let certain parts of this country wash away because of what you think those people's views were. Because I'll keep it at buck. The family I have in Florida is the white side of the family. I have deliberately not spoken to some of them in years, and I try to keep my interactions with the others as short as possible because they are horrendously racist, like so deeply in a way that I don't think they even comprehend how racist they are. And I've just decided it can no longer be my responsibility now that I'm an adult with agency to put up with that. Like, that's just something I'm redefining, is that no, I'm not going to tolerate having my hair pet through every family function. It doesn't change the fact that I'm upset, that I'm scared, right? Because at the end of the day, like, my cousins, my uncles don't deserve to be abandoned by the government. And if they're being abandoned, my cousins, my uncles are fairly well off. They're fairly capable of taking care of themselves. I'm not even that worried about them. I'm thinking about how, if it's this bad for them, how much worse is it for everybody else? Also, yeah, man, my cousins have children. And whoever my cousins grew up to be, whether or not my cousins ever decide to take it upon themselves to unlearn their racism, that will never change the fact that if someday my baby second, third cousin grows up and decides, I don't want to be like that. I think I want to get to know the people in my family who are black and unlearn this. I'm not going to deny a kid, a teenager, a 19-year-old that opportunity. Not when I've got anywhere from like 15 to 20 years on my cousin's kid. Oh my God, yeah, if I'm 40 and one of my cousin's kids shows up at my door saying, I don't have anywhere to go, I'm queer and I don't want to be racist, I want them to live to see that day. A lot of you have this idea that disaster can and should only happen to certain people, and you don't reckon with the reality that that's not how the world works. And it's childish. Also, again, as climate change gets worse, our ability to predict the severity of these events is also going to decline. A part of why this is so bad is because people weren't told it would be. And we're going to hold that against them. Despite the fact that, again, just based on economy and ability to influence the scope of the world alone, Appalachia is not the source of our climate change issues. Even if they vote Republican, they are still generating less toxic chemicals, terrible labor, and probably AI than the average corporate Democrat. I got tagged in a video yesterday where someone summed it up very nicely. Instead of asking, why aren't people evacuating, you need to be asking, why weren't people evacuated? Do you have any idea how hard it is to evacuate during a natural disaster? Even if you do have the ability to pack up your car, get on the road, you have somewhere else to go, you have somewhere else to stay, it can take 4 to 6 hours to complete a drive that's usually 20 to 40 minutes. Because everybody's trying to leave at once. It is bumper to bumper on evacuation routes. You can do everything right. Everything right, whatever that means. You can leave on time and you can still not make it. That would not be the case if we invested in things like a national transit system, if we had actual support and access for people with disabilities, including veterans. Veterans can still be disabled, and I'm telling you right now, as somebody whose father falls into this population, there are a lot of non-white people who have only served in the military as a means of staying alive because it comes with full benefits and often the opportunity to pay for college. It doesn't mean I condone the actions of the US military. It just means that if we are all frogs in a boiling pot of water, I don't see much sense in turning to the other frogs and asking, well, why don't you jump out? I'm not feeling particularly hot yet, but you seem like you are. Why don't you jump out?
I've discovered this new word called misandry.
I just finished a workout, so no one gets to comment on how shitty I look right now, but that's why y'all gotta watch Dancing with the Stars, okay? Because I didn't know who that woman was 3 to 4 weeks ago, and now I think she and the salsa that Reginald VelJohnson did to Motown Philly are the only two things between me and a complete mental breakdown right now. Do you know who that is? That's a former bachelorette who went on the show, didn't find love, as many bachelorettes don't, then went and did Dancing with the Stars, finished, I want to say like second or third. She did really, really well, got multiple perfect scores, and went all the way to the finals. Then seemingly finished the show, came out as a lesbian, and has been dating the most adorable, mousy little lesbian I've ever seen ever since. What was I doing before I had her in my life? That's the only white woman.
One of
of my favorite things I've ever learned from a Vox documentary is that the prevailing theory on why we dance, like why humans in terms of evolution might have started dancing, is that beyond expression and catharsis, synchronized movement as a group could create the illusion that a group of individuals was actually one much larger predator, right? So one of my favorite thematic ways to use dancers in storytelling is as community builders. There's a lot of trust and support of the other person required in group or even partner dance performance. All this is to say is that when a dancer is able to unite people, right? When a dancer is able to bring people together through the sheer joy of seeing them perform, that is the embodiment of dance. That is beyond technique, beyond style, function, whatever, what dance is meant to do. So give Reginald VelJohnson and Emma Slater their 10s, goddammit.
And I think we did good, despite Gene Simmons being a total ding-a-ling.
This season of Dancing with the Stars needed Phaedra Parks more than I can express. No, I'm right. Hear me out. The vast majority of this cast appears to either be Reginald VelJohnson's or Anna Delvey's, right? Either delightful rays of sunshine or passive-aggressive and don't look particularly stoked to be there. But I'll keep saying this. I don't dislike Anna Delvey because she's unlikable. I believe women deserve to be unlikable. I don't like her because she's a flagrant example of white privilege. However, Phaedra Parks is an example of why I love women who just say what they are thinking, even if it's not the cool or popular thing, because she's right. For those of you who don't watch Dancing with the Stars, however weird you're imagining Gene Simmons of Kiss fame as a guest judge being, it was somehow worse. And I think they should just let Phaedra beat him up. Like, I think they should just let her lose.